This is Court Storming with your host, Harry Sook.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Court Storming. I am back and just in time for the best part of the year because, ladies and gentlemen, if you've checked your calendars, it is indeed March, meaning the time of March Madness, the time that we all wait for, the time that we count down for every single basketball season. And boy, am I glad that we are filming this show on a Sunday, as we always do in March, and not on a Thursday, because my mood would be very, very different. 2 32-point blowouts this week. One on the receiving end, but one on the giving end. The latter last night in the white. I'm still in my jacket. I did change shirts, though. Don't you worry. I am not a disgusting person. But joining me tonight, as he always does, when he can, my man, Roger Rubin. Roger, thank you so much for the time tonight. I am very appreciative of you joining me, especially you're a busy man.
Well, I'm busy enough, but I mean, my pleasure to be here with you.
So, Roger, I don't want to spend too much time on it because of how disastrous it was. But we do have to talk about the UConn game. And we'll get to my thoughts on it a little bit later, but you were there. I unfortunately got stuck due to American Airlines and the blizzard in the north and was not able to make it back in time for that game. Thanks, by the way, heads up, Joe Masseri, keeping the seat warm for me while I was gone. But you were there. I mean, what an anomaly of a game. What a terrible turn of events, and something I haven't seen from this team. I mean, you think of the end of the Kentucky game, you think of that 8-minute stretch in the Auburn game, and obviously the Providence meltdown. But those weren't this. When were you watching and you just go, I got to burn the tape. I got to throw this one away. This just doesn't count.
What happened on Wednesday night in Hartford was nothing short of a debacle. The team, St. John's, gave up an 18-0 run in the first half and basically fell out of contention. At one point in that 18-0 run, missed 12 shots in a row. And then in the second half, I think we all know, 17 minutes and 28 seconds without a made shot, 24 consecutive missed shots to end the game. And I don't think that the talking to Zuby Ejifor afterwards, he was like, never seen anything like it. And when Rick Pitino tried to find some sort of points to that, oh, well, this reminds me of, it's been 5 decades of it. He could only come up with 1 or 2 that were this bad. So.
Yeah, I listened to you on the pod afterwards, and you said you would have to be worried if this affected their mentality going forward. Obviously, it didn't, because we know what happened yesterday. And here, I do have the few and rare St. John's highlights for that night, courtesy of the university, so I will go ahead and give something positive. But my question is just, how worried should fans be that this could happen again?
In March, we're talking about a couple of different things here. We're talking about the end of the regular season. I don't see something like this happening in either of their last 2 games, Georgetown or at Seton Hall. We're talking about the segment that is the conference tournament. I don't really think that there's a danger of something like this happening to St. John's again at that time. Playing against Connecticut at the Garden, which is where maybe the conference championship game would be, St. John's was great and beat Connecticut. So I'm not really thinking that. But, I also don't think that, with the NCAA tournament, matchups are a very big part of things. And, I don't think anybody really foresaw what happened at the end of last season with that game against Arkansas. There's St. John's, they're a number 2 seed, and Arkansas is a 10 that just upset Kansas. And, R.J. Lewis is the player of the year in the conference, and you don't expect him to have a 3 for 17 shooting day. So, and that wasn't the debacle that this game last Wednesday in Hartford was, but I will say that, do I think it'll happen again? No, and I think anyone who follows St. John's should probably have their mind set at ease by what happened Saturday night at the Garden.
Yeah, I would have to agree wholeheartedly. Even when things have gone wrong for this team, as we've listed multiple times, it didn't look like that. And I don't know. I'm going to call it an anomaly. I'm going to call it an outlier. Call it anything you want. I'm going to call it done with because I don't want to think about it again. However, Rick, while not doing a formal press conference, much to the chagrin of some people online, did speak to the media after and took the blame on himself. So we are going to go ahead and listen to that real fast before we burn the tape. I called this segment "Burn the Tape" because we're going to burn the tape.
It'll definitely be real fast because it didn't last long.
All right, here we go.
It's all on me. I'm very disappointed in our performance offensively, especially of sharing the ball, moving the ball. So it's all on me. But we'll get ready for Villanova. We're still playing for a league championship. It doesn't matter whether you lose by 1 or 40. The league championship's still at stake. Obviously, we're going to make our corrections and move on.
And we are going to move on because I don't want to talk about it anymore. Rick even said to you guys before I could get back, unfortunately, that he just said that because he wanted to get out of there. He didn't want to talk to you guys. He wanted to get out of there because when you're angry, you say things that you end up regretting. And he was angry and disappointed as he should be. But let's juxtapose that to the emotions of last night. Now, Roger, normally you and I talk about it and then we listen to the words of, the wonderful Rick Pitino. But I actually want to start this segment right now with what Rick had to say for a very specific reason. So let's go ahead and take a listen to me and him catching up after the game last night. Coach, you said white suits are for confidence, and here your team comes out, largest win in program history, 32 points against Nova. Do you feel better about the decision?
I do. I love what you're wearing. It's really the word confidence. Rubin actually convinced me to wear when he said, do you feel the fans will feel you lack confidence if you don't put the white suit? And here a newspaper writer got me to wear a white suit.
That is the decision that made you change your mind?
I have a coffee crew that all went out, 9 of them, and bought white suits in the honor of this whiteout.
Well, everyone looked great, and the team performed likewise. When you have a first half where you put up 48 points, does it make Wednesday, where you scored 40 total, more confusing or more disappointing?
Look, I lost by 32 at Louisville, went to an Elite Eight, lost by 31 to Providence, went to a Final Four. So it's one game. I know it's embarrassing. We felt bad, but it's one game. Seton Hall fought Connecticut really, really hard tonight. Could have won the game. They lost by 3 or 5 points. It's one loss. It won't be remembered as any great feat. Now, I'll remember it, and certainly the players will remember it, but sometimes it makes you better because you realize what you did wrong.
Coach, a lot of fantastic performances tonight. Zuby's triple-double, Ian's arguably most complete game. What stood out to you about your team's performance?
Yeah, I think Ian, every time he made a mistake, he stole the ball back and erased his mistake. But, he wants to score the basketball. That's not a bad thing. But he got 5 rebounds, 5 steals, and that's what I want from him, to fill his stat sheet up with assists, rebounds, and steals, because then he's a great basketball player.
Does anything Zuby does impress you anymore, or have you come to expect it?
When he first came here, he couldn't pass the ball at all, and now he leads the team in assists. He's making his threes, he's making his free throws. Great basketball play. He's going to be player of the year.
Last one for you, Tuesday night, senior night, last true home game here at MSG. Just what emotions can we expect for those senior class?
We need to pack this house for Zuby alone. The other seniors are important, certainly, but I said this to the media before. Zuby's father said to me, Coach, a school offered us double the amount of money. I said, really? And I was about to ask him what they offer, and he said, we wouldn't even think about leaving St. John's. So we need to pack this house for him and the other seniors and the rest of the team.
Apparently, we have Roger Rubin to thank for the white suit. So thank you, Roger, for making the white out exactly what we expected to be.
Well, everybody's welcome. I was just doing my part. One of the things that was sort of hanging over the team in the days that followed the Wednesday loss in Hartford, and it was a bad loss. I mean, they were getting killed on social media. They were getting killed on SportsCenter. They were getting killed in news broadcasts. It was bad. Was whether or not the team would be shaken or stirred into action. And, I sort of felt like, are they going to, is this going to bleed into the next game? Are they going to let, what happened on Wednesday night affect them Saturday? And I sort of asked him, if you don't go with the white suit that you have traditionally gone with for the whiteout game, aren't you letting what happened on Wednesday affect Saturday, which is exactly the wrong message? So That's the reason that I asked him. And I was surprised that he said he hadn't thought about it that way. But in retrospect, I'm guessing that the 8 friends of his who bought the white suits probably had more influence than me.
I disagree. He even said that he texted his buddies after that you convinced him. So thank you for that. And Roger, what a response it was. White suit and confidence completely warranted. So, they are now 11-0 in losses or after losses under Pitino. It is the biggest win in program history for the Johnnies ever over Villanova. Villanova's largest margin of defeat since 1997 against who? Well, Rick Pitino and the Kentucky Wildcats. And it was a season-high 26 assists, only 8 turnovers. And then I wanted to talk about 2 things, which is Ian Jackson and the corner threes, one you just saw right there from Isaiah Sellers. There's been twice this season that Rick has called out something particular. One was early when they weren't getting the ball into Zuby, and he said, hey, get the ball into Zuby, we play better, and good things happen for us. And it was a point of emphasis, and they did it, and that kind of was the beginning of this magical 13-game run that they had. And then last time after the game, he said, we're taking he called them the Josan 2-point shots, and said, taking too many of those, we aren't taking corner threes. There was another one from Sellers. They started the game 4 for 4 for that, and kind of built the lead that just never went away. And I love that, and I just wanted to point that out. And then 2 is Ian Jackson. Ian Jackson has been receiving a little bit of flack for the past couple games for not performing up to what he was expected to when he transferred. And then he came and played like that. I love the complete game. I mean, you look at his stat. He had a career-high 5 steals, game-high 19 points, 1 assist, 5 rebounds, and only 1 turnover, which is massive for Ian. My question to you, can Ian do this again? Is this a new Ian Jackson that we thought we were going to get with the haircut, but now it is a new Ian Jackson because he's playing both sides of the ball? What do you think? Is this the version of Ian Jackson that we can expect through March?
I'm not sure that you can really take a look at a single game and say he's a different player and this is the guy that we're going to see. But what I do believe is that, they started Dylan Darling at point guard. Okay. They didn't start Ian Jackson at point guard. And, they've been kind of trying to do the square peg in a round hole, or maybe I've got that the other way around. Maybe it's a round peg in the square hole. Anyway, they've been trying to make a guy who was a shooting guard into a point guard. And I'm not saying that it can't be done. I mean, certainly, we've seen it done at other schools like at DePaul. But, it's a learning process, and you've got a guy like Darling who has sort of emerged as the 4th best player on the team, and he's a point guard, and he knows how to play point guard because it's always been his position. And, playing the 2 of them together is interesting. I think that was pretty helpful. Do I think that Jackson sees the rewards for doing the other things? Yeah, I think that he does. I also think that this was the kind of game, and Villanova is the kind of opponent that sort of, he is built to play against. They do a lot of outlet passes that he was able to pick off. He was able to get past people and get to the rim. He did a great job, and he didn't watch the rebounds. He went for them, and that's a big change. That's very important. As far as the corner 3-pointers that you were asking about, I actually take that to be a not a quantum leap, but a leap for St. John's, because sometimes a coach feels that there's something that needs to change on a team, and it happens gradually. But this team is now veterans who are good at doing the scouting reports. And I think that they sort of have figured out how to immediately run the plays that he wants them to run. And so he decides we need more corner threes after that Connecticut game. Bam, more corner threes. There they are. And I think a team that can do that quickly, that's a sign of a team that is that's pretty sophisticated and advanced.
Yeah, no, I loved it. I love seeing that response, and I loved Ian. Coach said he erased his mistakes in the post-game press conference, and I love that. And there was one time he yanked him real fast for going under on a guy and said, hey, I'm going to put you right back in, but don't do that again. And he just said, yes, coach, went back in, and guess what? He didn't do it again. But obviously, Ian Jackson, a phenomenal performance. There are very few things that measured up to what Zuby Ejiofor did last night. And that is what we are going to talk about just in a minute when Court Storming returns.
Welcome back to Court Storming with Perry Sook.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Court Storming. We are still reveling in the glory that was last night at the Garden. I loved it. I went up to Villanova for that game, and that was fun, but there's nothing like a 32-point beatdown of the third-place team in the conference to just make you smile a little bit. And so, on that note, I want to bring in Roger Rubin back into the show because Zuby Ejiofor, what a man. What a man he absolutely is. Notches the fourth triple-double in program history. Now, granted, I'll put the disclaimer, the fourth known triple-double. Take that for what it's worth, but that was the note we were given. 16 points, 12 rebounds, 10 assists. He leads the team in assists and also had 3 blocks, making him the third player in D1 history since 05-06 to have such a stat line. Roger, I feel like Zuby sometimes we don't talk about him enough because he is so good, and we've just begun to trust his consistency so much that we don't give him the credit he's due. Well, right now, I want to give us a chance. Just how amazing is that performance and this season that Zuby Ejiofor is putting together?
It's an incredible season that he's putting together in terms of the high major, divisions where, players who lead in points, rebounds, assists, and blocks at high major level. He's the only one who leads his team, and that's pretty significant. He, when you think about Zuby, he transferred from Kansas, and he joined St. John's as a sophomore, and he was behind Joel Soriano, and he, by the end of that season, I think most of us who paid attention to the team realized that he had become a more significant inside force maybe than Soriano. He didn't have as much polish on his offensive game. But if you look at the way that he has advanced every single offseason to the next, then he becomes the most improved player as a junior and a first-team All-Big East guy. And then he starts this season as the preseason player of the year. And, look at what he's done. He shoots a three-pointer. He can guard guards on the perimeter. His body is reshaped. This is a guy who really is exemplary and probably somebody who I think when people look back at the last quarter century might feel like his body of work is the best of anyone to don the uniform.
I think if 24 is not in the rafters soon after this season, it will be. Now, Roger, I want to bring up another anecdote. There's another reason I had you on. Before the season, you asked Rick Pitino if you thought Zuby Ejiofor should be the preseason Big East Player of the Year. And he goes, well, Roger, what do you think? And you said, I think he does. And Rick goes, well, if you think it, I think it too. And I love that. And then sure enough, very soon after, he was named. So now I'm going to ask you again, Roger, is Zuby Ejiofor not only the preseason Big East Player of the Year, but so far in the season, with 2 games to go, is Zuby Ejiofor the Big East Player of the Year?
I mean, I believe that he is. I think that he is. I think that the Big East Player of the Year is almost certainly going to come from one of the best teams. There are people who are contenders for it who are on the University of Connecticut. Taris Reed might be one of them, and he certainly made a claim for it last Wednesday in Hartford. A lot of people like Alex Caravan for his, history of being a great player. But I don't think that there's anybody who impacts games quite the way that Ejiofor does so consistently. I mean, Trey Carroll Xavier's a really good player too, but I don't see Zuby finishing second to anybody.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, the NFL, where it's almost always the quarterback of one of the best offenses, it should be the piece that makes the team go on one of the best teams. And while there are some great players for Connecticut who could be considered the best team in the Big East, Zuby, as you said, leads in all of those statistical categories. He is having a historically good season for himself, and I think it would be an absolute shame if he was not given the award. I did get a chance to catch up with Zuby after his big night, so we are going to go ahead and take a listen to that now. Zuby, you said after Wednesday that you guys had to come out and couldn't play like that. Well, here you go, the largest win in program history against Villanova. Just what was it like prepping for this game and then seeing the results?
It was a really, just competitive, level of practice. I said it earlier, you could lose games, but you can't lose games off of effort. And I think that we did a great job of, responding as like a championship level team would. And, guys set the tone early. Ian Jackson, coming in off the bench, 5 steals as well, 18, 19 points, something like that. So, that's something that we need, out of him especially. And a lot of guys, stepped up. It was a huge game, a huge opportunity for us, and we responded the right way.
Zuby, just the 4th known triple-double in program history tonight with your name attached to it. What was it like as you dished that last pass to Josan and watched that bucket go in to hear the crowd erupt? Not calling for Josan, but calling for you.
It meant everything. I had a lot of family in the crowd. And, the last couple possessions, I was at the top of the key and trying to find my guys. I knew I had probably, 2 assists left. And I think the first one was Deku, and then the last one was Josan. And I'm just encouraging the guys that, I'm going to get you open. When you're open, just shoot the ball. And they were able to shoot the ball, and he was able to fall through, and it was a really special moment.
Villanova head coach Kevin Willard called you the perfect player for Coach Pitino. Can you just describe how his relationship with you has shaped you over these past couple of years?
He's meant everything, just being able to, play under him now for 3 years. I literally grew up here, just coming in as a sophomore. I was really nervous, Coach Pitino, the bright lights of MSG, and made a lot of mistakes. But, now I'm, I've gone to grown up, as a man, gone to grow as a leader as well in this program. And he's made my job a lot more easier than I could have imagined, and I love him, man. And it's really just a great relationship. He understands me, and I understand him as well.
As a leader, are you proud of the way your team and your guys responded tonight?
Extremely proud. We were talking to each other, and, after the game, understanding that that's not St. John's. We understood that, and we came in the next day, we practiced, we played hard, competed hard. We understood that we made a lot of mistakes. We seen a lot of the mistakes that were made, and I think we fixed it tonight. And like I said, it was a great job of us, just setting the tone early in the game and running away with that lead as well.
And then last one for you, obviously only one more true home game here, senior night against Georgetown. Just what are the emotions going to be going through your head suiting up for St. John's for your last home game here at the Garden?
I couldn't tell you exactly how my emotions will go. I don't know if I'm a crier or not. I'm not really a big crier, but man, it would. I don't know. My family's going to be there. It's going to be my last time, in MSG, especially with the St. John's jersey on. So it would mean absolutely everything, and it would feel a lot better if we come out with the win as well.
You got to love it. What a sensational player, and what a grateful and generous young man. And so, Roger, we got the bounce back. We had the performance of a lifetime from Zuby. We had a great game all around, a 32-point blowout. So we know what's left. We got 2 games left. That first one that we keep mentioning, senior night, Georgetown, Tuesday night. And, guys, you better pack that place for Zuby and all the other seniors. Then on the road, Seton Hall on Friday. Then the Big East. So look, they don't control their seed anymore because of the Providence losing to Creighton. However, a note for everyone, that did raise Providence's level to top 75, which increases the win and decreases the loss badness. Roger, what are you expecting these last 2 games and into the Big East tournament? I mean, is it inevitable a UConn St. John's rematch? I mean, on Saturday night at the Garden?
I'm having trouble envisioning a championship game that isn't St. John's against Connecticut for a 3rd time this season. Obviously, anything can happen. We've seen teams come out of nowhere and get hot for 3 nights, and things happen. But I don't think that there's anyone who is in the class of those 2 teams inside the conference. Now, as far as playing out the rest of the season and the seeding and everything like that, both UConn and St. John's have 2 losses. If they win out, they share the regular season title. And then the tiebreaker for the top seed it could go anywhere because, if Providence has swept Creighton, but right now Creighton has a better record than Providence, if they end up with the same record, then that would sort of lean toward Connecticut. But if there's a third team involved in that tie, a team that has the same record as Creighton and Providence, or a third and fourth team, it changes all the different tiebreakers, and it's, it could be pretty confusing.
Yeah, it's a complete headache. So I say win your 2 games, get a share of the Big East regular season title, and play who you're going to play. We've seen that the gap can be as large as 32 points between the 2 and 3 teams in the standings right now. So it should not matter. Come up, show up, and play. And with that, Roger, what do you think? I mean, a lot of people have them listed as a 5 seed. They were tinkering on a 4 seed whenever they were coming into the UConn game. Obviously, we know how that went. But then the bounce back at Villanova. What does it take? If this team does win the Big East tournament, can they be a 4 seed? And if they lose in the Big East tournament, God forbid, to UConn, is this team a 5 seed or dropping down to a 6? 4 and 5, as you said, they're close together. 6 is where you get into a little jam. What do you think is the reach here?
I mean, I think if somebody had to decide right this second, they would either be one of the better 6s or one of the worst 5s. If they were to win the last 2 regular season games and then roll through the conference tournament and take the tournament championship, I think that opens the door for them to possibly be a 4. Some of it's going to depend on what happens with other teams. There have been a lot of teams that are on the so-called bubble that have had a hard week. One of the things that may not be great for St. John's is that game against Seton Hall could become a very, very important game for Seton Hall. And they could have a lot to play for when St. John's has, the same thing that they've had to play for several days now.
Exactly. You one game at a time. One game at a time. So first of all, let's pack the MSG for senior night, for Zuby, for all the seniors, and then go take care of business at Seton Hall. All you can do is win. All you got to do is win your games, and then it doesn't matter what seed you are, what number you are. Roger, thank you so much for joining me tonight, and I look forward to seeing you at the game on Tuesday.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much for asking me. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you. And, guys, I will leave you with this, a little perspective from Coach Pitino, because on Wednesday night, I was angry. I almost threw some things at the TV, and so I just want to leave you with a little perspective to be grateful for where we are, to be where our feet are right now with this St. John's team.
I think what you have to look back on is where we were 4 years ago and where we are today. I think that's the most important thing. Sold out Madison Square Garden. You couldn't find St. John's with a search warrant. And now these guys come in here, 3 different teams. I really felt we should have made the NCAA the first year. We played Connecticut really tough. I think got to score in that final game, but and they were national champions. But we had 3 different teams, and they all have brought it. We won the championship last year. We won the Big East tournament. We're fighting for a championship now. So I think sometimes when you lose, the world's coming to an end. No, it's not. You saw what great players do when they have a bad loss.
2 games left in the regular season. And we will be back here next Sunday night to break them down, to look at the Big East brackets, and to get ready for this beautiful thing called March. Thank you all for joining me, as you always do. See you next week. That'll do it for this episode of Court Storming.